Hi, y'all. I am Brooke Yarbrough. I am 19. I am Grits, girl raised in the South. Of the two of us, my mama is the more conservative one.
Good morning, I'm Dana Yarbrough. As Rich said, I'm with Parent to Parent of Virginia. I also work with our UCED, our University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, where I have the pleasure of working with lots of family support and transition programs, including a post-secondary education program for students with intellectual disabilities at Virginia Commonwealth University. And someone in the audience actually comes from my office, Irene, so she gets a raise because she came all the way up from Virginia to, she gets extra credit. I'll make sure I put that in, Irene. I heard Michael say y'all, which was great because I grew up in Newburyport, so I'm a little conflicted of whether I should be saying y'all or whether I should be talking about party and wicked hard. So I'm not quite sure which accent I'll use, so we'll just see as I go along. I'm going to have to do some double duty helping Brooke here. Hey. So we're here to talk today a little bit about what a typical life is. And so you see here, this is what Brooke and I believe a typical life. So when the vision for a typical life really begins with that it's different for each one of us. That is defined by our cultural beliefs, our norms, our family experiences, should not be defined by our disabilities. It's also about, it's the trajectory that each one of you has that impact on our families. So as professionals, as other parents, as educators, you have the power to change the path of our lives. And that's incredible power that I'm not sure that you always recognize. And unfortunately, it can be reflected by very poor outcomes. So Michael talked a little bit about, I'm going to just call you Michael even though I don't know him, but I do know one of the staff that works with him though. Sanchez. I wanted to talk just a little bit about some of those poor outcomes because I think they're important to what we're just setting the foundation for where we are today. So this first slide really shows the employment of youth with and without disabilities. So this is the Department of Labor has a website, the Office of Disability Employment Policy, and every month they update the employment rates. And so you can see, this was from December 2013, that 20 to 24-year-olds with a disability, about 32% stated they were employed. 64% of youth without disabilities were employed. So the employment rate is about half of that, of their peers without disabilities. Employment really is foundational to our life. It's where we meet people. It's where we get money. It's where we make friends. It gives us meaning and a sense of pride in our lives. It's really central to our lives. You can see just a little bit of data here. This is not Massachusetts specific. This is national data. And Michael touched on it, if they have any access to post-secondary education, that increases their opportunities for employment, increases their wages to be higher. It increases them to have a job and a career, not just an entry-level job, but actually to begin career building. We see that 74% of young adults reported that their annual income was less than $25,000. We also have seen data that shows the average hourly rate is $3 to $4 an hour. So they're unemployed, underemployed, and they're underpaid. When we look at post-secondary education data, we can see about 60% of students with disabilities have enrolled in some type of post-secondary education. 44% in a two-year college, 19% in four-year college, 32% in some other type of business or vocational school. But what's really startling is how many actually complete. So not only is there an issue of access to some type of post-secondary education programming, but the retention, it's getting and staying in that program is a real challenge. 2/3 to half are not finishing the programs. We also see this slide that talks a little bit about community engagement, just where are people? Are they engaged? We see about half of people with multiple disabilities report that they see some type of friend during the week. And I think if each one of us asked ourselves that, it would be so much higher. We'd be seeing friends daily. Interestingly enough, this bottom point talks about banking and savings. 42% of young adults with intellectual disabilities had a bank account. Even less had a checking or a credit card. When you compare that to people, University in Kansas looked in April of 2013, 89% of young adults had savings account and 51% had credit cards. So people with disabilities, again, are not engaged in the community. They're lonely. That may be one of their biggest disabilities. And they don't have they're not savings, banking, so are they shopping? What's happening out in the community? Are they engaged at all in their community? So now we're going to talk a little bit about our pathway to a typical life. Okay, Brooke, you ready? You can go on.
That's me. I was born 13 weeks early and had massive bleeding in the brain that caused me to have cerebral palsy, epilepsy, cortical visual impairments, and intellectual disabilities. Woohoo! I am a high school graduate. It is important to know that I live outside the services system. I live a life of my choosing, not one dictated by the service system. I do receive special education supports. I am a postgrad. I still go to school to work on communication and job IEP goals. I just started getting supplemental security income. I think that it will keep me poor, so I hope my dog business booms in 2014 and 2015 so I can stop getting it. I don't want my earning potential limited by SSI.
So to get to where Brooke is today, from that little 2-pound premature baby up to about an 80-pound young woman, took quite a few things. Oops, it'd be helpful if you had the slide. It took having a vision. It took having hopes and dreams, and I'm going to talk about expectations in just a moment. It took having a life that was balanced with informal and formal supports, with those that were paid and unpaid, and having that healthy balance that all of us should have. All too often, I hear from parents in the work that I do every day that they're on a waiting list for services and they're waiting. We can't wait. We have to be, something has to happen while we're waiting on those waiting lists. And I fear that sometimes people think that Medicaid funding in particular is going, long-term care funding is going to give them a life, and it's not. It is not going to give them the life. What we should be doing is setting a vision for that life and then figuring out how we're going to pay and provide the supports for that. And we can't just rely on formal paid services system. It's never going to fund everything and everybody. It's not there to fund people's wants. It's there to support people's needs. And I think all too often, as a parent, we get caught in that trap. And I think as parent groups, we sometimes can set families up for that. And so it's our job as parent support organizations to make sure that we're helping families develop dreams, develop hopes and expectations, and figuring out how to have that healthy balance between formal and informal lives that are paid and unpaid by support systems. It's being willing to move from being an advocate for Brooke to being an advocate with Brooke. And that's a big shift, and a lot of us really fear that shift as our children get older. And it's also being a part of a team. It cannot do it alone. We did not do the work that my husband John and I did to support Brooke. It was not done with just John and I. It was done with lots of professionals in Brooke's lives who were there to support and advocate and help think out of the box with us. I want to just start with a vision statement. I won't read this because I think you, if you can't see it, I think maybe these are available on the, possibly there's some of the slides are going to be available on a website for folks for the conference. If not, our email addresses we'll be glad to give them. But when Brooke was 2 years old, one of her doctors asked us, what did we see for Brooke? And to be honest, we could barely get through the day. With Brooke's oxygen, with all that she was getting early intervention and 5 and 6 services, 3 and 4 doctor's appointments that she was seeing every few weeks. She was having seizures and she was on 10 or 12 pills a day, trying to figure out how to pay the bills, pay the mortgage, work, not have to quit so I could be at home, but try to find daycare and childcare for Brooke was a real challenge. We couldn't even think to the future. But she sat us down and made us think about that. She asked us to take the time to come up with what our vision was for Brooke and to put it down on paper, to get it out there and then make sure people knew it. It was important that we had a path, just as we were planning for a trip and the little triptych, the road map that we needed, that was going to help guide us. And Dr. Kirkman was so wise because that really helped us as we moved into the services system, special education and other services, to be able to tell people not only what we envisioned for Brooke when she got older, but what our beliefs and family norms and culture were, what we expected. We've heard Michael mentioned about expectations, and we know what a strong influence they have. We know that there is a cyclical experience. If you have high expectations, studies have shown that kids do better on their tests, with their homework, they do better academically, and in turn, that raises even higher expectations by families. It really bothers me when I'm out talking about post-secondary education or employment. Brooke and I are out doing things, and people say, oh, well, my child can't work. My child will never work. That is BS. I won't say the full word because it will get typed up, but that is BS. We need to reframe what work means. It could be as simple as reframing what work means. You're going to hear about how we reframe that with Brooke. We knew as Brooke was growing up, and we could see how some of the disabilities were impacting her life, the support needs, that a traditional job or career that I may think of, that I went into, or the path that I did, this may not be the same path that Brooke was going to be going on, or that her dad went on, or that her cousins went on. And that was okay. We just had to reframe in our mind what that meant. And for that, it was post-secondary education. I can't talk about expectations without just giving a shout out to the women in my family. There's always been an expectation that the women in my family would be engaged in volunteerism in the community and that they would be business owners. My grandmother up in the top built airplanes during the war. She drove people to the voting booths even when she was in her 80s. She was the first woman elected to the County Board of Supervisors in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. My mother graduated high school at 16, owned her own business, and was the first woman elected as president of the Chamber of Commerce in Newburyport. My sister owned jewelry. She's actually not up there, unfortunately. My sister owned jewelry and tattoo shops in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Florida. I've been volunteering with the local juvenile court for over 17 years, representing abused and neglected children with disabilities. I've been a business owner since 2000 and a disability advocate. No one in my family, none of the women, thought that would be any different and should be any different for Brooke.
This is the power of attorney. Right now, my parents can help me make financial, educational, and legal decisions, but I could change that to someone else if I want. My mom is also a dual signature on my bank account. I don't want a guardian. If I had one, I would lose my rights. I love voting in the presidential election.
Woohoo.
That is my right as a citizen that I could lose with a guardian.
And when Brooke was voting in the presidential election, Brooke's using an iPad today with a Pro Lo Quo app. It's not something that she normally uses. I will tell you that has been my one kind of struggle with the special education services throughout Brooke's K-12. Is a communication system and trying to find something that works given Brooke's unique abilities and disabilities. We typically use behavior, and so preparing for big choices, if it's daily choice making, we started when Brooke was little. self-determination is important for all of us. And so starting early on, when she was young, asking what color, what socks she wanted to wear, what pants she wanted to wear, what shirt she wanted to wear, and having her pick, and whether we thought they matched or not didn't really matter. It was her choice to wear that. As she got older, it's the same thing with food. We often found that people gave Brooke one choice and two choice, A and B, but they never gave C, which is, I don't want either one of those two choices. And so that was a really important lesson for not only us to learn, but for the people who were around Brooke to support her and in the school to learn they always had to have that third choice saying, those are both crap, I don't want either one of those. When it came time to vote for the president, we spent weeks and weeks talking with Brooke about the presidential election. She had just turned 18. It was going to be the first time she voted. It was an important right of hers. We had them also talking about it at school, and she used her hands to slap which hand, and so she consistently chose the same person, and so we were able to go to the voting booth that day and get in there and register her vote. And we won't tell you who. But you might be able to guess from the conservativeness that I embody. Okay, here you go.
This is my one-pager. This tells people who don't know me a little bit about who I am and how to support me. My doctor, school, and family members have a copy.
I think it's really important when you're going to do supportive decision-making and alternatives to guardianship that people need to have this information in an easy-to-understand way. It's a way for people to know Brooke's fears, what makes a good day for Brooke, what things she likes, how to best support her. And this is where we started when we started looking at we knew right away we weren't going to go in for guardianship, but where did we build that foundation? It started with something like this, and really listening to Brooke and listening and watching her behaviors.
In elementary school, my mama told my IEP team that I would own my own business. They told her she was in denial. After that, every IEP after that had a goal towards self-employment. During high school, I had a great transition specialist. He never worked with anyone like me who doesn't talk, but he'll listen to me through my behavior. He knew I was interested in dogs, water, and music. These are some places I went to visit or where I volunteered, like a choir, a DJ company, and a dog rescue. The dog rescue is my favorite. That is how we decided that a dog boarding business would be the right self-employment for me. Along my journey to self-employment, these are things that worked or that got in the way for my mama and me. My mama and I didn't like when people said no. We liked when they said, "How can we make it happen?"
I'm not sure because I left school when I was a senior in high school in Newburyport, so I don't know what the schools are like today, what the services system in Massachusetts. I certainly keep up with all my nieces and nephews live here, and one of my nieces is a teacher in Lawrence. But in Virginia, our service system is very siloed. There are lots of doors to go into, often they're dead ends. If you don't have the right label, if you don't have the right income, then you can't get services. Sometimes when you get into the door, you're given a menu, and the menu only has a few things on there, and it's not the things that you want that are going to make life easier for you. We know that, for me, I can't stress enough the value of parent-to-parent support. When Brooke was born, having another parent who I could reach out to and have them hold my hand through that emotional roller coaster that was headed our way was invaluable. We had providers, we had educators when, as Brooke said, when I said, even when Brooke was 8, 9 years old, she's going to own her own business, so every IEP, every service plan needs to be directed towards that. And they kept saying I was in denial, that I didn't truly know who Brooke was, and that institutions and shelter workshops, and they had a whole list of things that were going to be appropriate for Brooke. They kind of pre-selected what Brooke's outcomes were going to be. And having that support from other parents, and having parents who had traveled that road before me, who I saw made amazing things happen with and for their children, helped me. Also growing up in New England, where I grew up around probably a little bit of a different environment than I live in Richmond, Virginia, where we're still fighting the Civil War. And so it's very different when you're there and you see people's reactions to disability than where you're here in the northern part of the country, and you see a totally different, sometimes comfort level with people in the community. I learned a lot about collaboration and negotiation from other parents, being willing to try things. If I'm going to ask them to try and get on the train that we're headed towards self-employment, I also needed to be willing to get on their train when they wanted to suggest things, even if I wasn't sure that it was going to work well. So it really was a lot of negotiation. Isn't about one winning over the other. It's about a win-win for all of us.
Here is my typical life.
This is you.
That's my house. My daddy's aunt left me the house when after that.
Oops, sorry.
Here is my typical life. That's my house. My daddy's aunt left me the house when I was 8. Aunt Evelyn had polio as a child and had difficulty walking. She wanted to give me something to make my life easier. That is my business, Brooke's Happy Tales dog boarding and pet sitting. I opened it 1 month after graduating high school. To learn more about how I got there, come hear me, Nicole, Lauren and Becky talk about our transition experiences in session 5.
As Brooke and I close out this morning, we want to thank Mary Summers. Mary and I have known each other for quite a few years through the parent-to-parent world, and happened to see Mary back in South Carolina in the fall, and she contacted me not long after that and asked if we would be interested in coming up, and I really appreciate the opportunity for us to come up. For me, some people think the English and the Scottish and Australian accents are sexy. I think the Boston accent is sexy, so it gave me the opportunity to come and absorb and soak in some of that, and see my relatives, my nieces and nephews, and my twin brother and others. I want to leave you with a little bit of homework. I know that Tom Sanacondro he gave you homework, and I want to give you homework as well. Some of the information, Michael talked about some of the post-school outcomes. I shared a few slides nationally. There is special education indicator data that is collected. Indicator 13 will give you a lot of information about what's happening with kids 1 year out of high school. Where are they? Are they in college? Are they employed? Are they engaged in their community? It's really important to find out that information so you all can have those conversations at the table, at the planning table, and at your kitchen table with your sons and daughters, that they don't end up in one of those statistics where they're unemployed, underemployed, that they really are able to get out and have a typical life like all of us. So again, we thank you.